Imagine waking up tomorrow to find out that the house you live in could be manufactured in just a few days on an assembly line and delivered to your lot as if it were a car. This is not a distant scenario. It is the silent battlefield of a dispute that already involves the two largest powers on the planet. Welcome to Tellnomics, where we reveal how economic decisions that seem distant can reshape your everyday life. Today, we uncover the war between China and the United States over modular and tiny houses, a market that promises to alter the very future of global real estate. To grasp the magnitude of this revolution, we need to look at the numbers. In 2023, the global modular construction market was valued at more than $150 billion, according to Modular intelligence. Projections indicate this sector will grow at over 6% annually until 2030, driven by speed, reduced cost, and architectural flexibility. Meanwhile, entire cities are facing housing crises. According to the United Nations, nearly 1 billion people live in inadequate housing conditions worldwide. Could modular homes be the immediate answer to this historic deficit? China has already begun to move aggressively on this chessboard. Companies such as Broad Sustainable Building became famous for erecting skyscrapers in just days using prefabricated modules. Chinese exporters are supplying countries across Africa, Latin America, and even Europe, leveraging scale and costs that rivals struggle to match. But the United States watches this offensive with suspicion. After all, the stakes are not just about who sells more houses, but about who sets global urbanization standards in the 21st century. Will Washington simply stand by as Beijing seeks to dominate a sector that touches directly on the dream of home ownership? In this field of tension, another intriguing element emerges: the so-called Tesla tiny house. A prototype unveiled years ago suggested that Elon Musk could eventually enter the housing sector, combining solar panels, batteries, and minimalist design into a portable, futuristic home. Although mass production has never been confirmed, the idea remains powerful. If Tesla were to transform housing into a technological product, it could drag the entire industry to a new level. But is this a real move, or just a marketing maneuver? We now face a deadlock. On one side, China promises affordable homes on a global scale. On the other, the United States could respond with heavy innovation and brand influence. The key question is, which force will manage to redefine the housing market before the global housing deficit becomes unsustainable? This is only the first piece of a puzzle that, in the next parts, we will decode together. Now imagine the direct impact of this clash on the daily lives of ordinary people dreaming of owning a home. In the United States, the median home price surpassed $400,000 in 2024, according to the National Association of Realtors. Meanwhile, in China's major cities like Beijing and Shanghai, the average price per square meter exceeds $10,000, based on data from Numbeo. The issue is clear. If living in traditional urban centers has become unaffordable for millions, doesn't it seem natural to search for cheaper, faster, and more efficient alternatives? It is precisely in this void that modular homes and tiny houses emerge as protagonists. Stories are already emerging that reveal how this trend can transform lives. In Austin, Texas, a modular community project was built in record time to house vulnerable populations, cutting construction costs by up to 50%. Meanwhile, in China, companies are assembling 10-story buildings in less than a week using prefabricated module systems, according to Broad Sustainable Building. Are we on the verge of witnessing the collapse of the traditional construction model? Or will this new format remain only a niche alternative for a select few? The numbers highlight the urgency. The World Bank estimates that by 2030, more than 300 million new housing units will need to be built to meet global demand. Can this realistically be achieved through traditional methods, slow and expensive construction? The answer seems obvious. Yet there is a detail that could change everything: the geopolitical dispute. If the United States leads this transition, it could reinforce its narrative of innovation and sustainability. If China dominates, it would further consolidate its position as the world's factory, exporting not just clothing and electronics, but entire homes. And caught in the middle of this dispute is the everyday consumer. Would you accept living in a mass-produced home, perhaps imported from the other side of the planet? Would you trade the charm of traditional construction for the promise of lower costs and integrated technology? These questions reveal that the modular revolution is not just about bricks and steel. It is also about culture, identity, and the way we imagine home itself. This is where the game starts to get interesting. The race between China and the United States is not limited to factories and tariffs. It invades your life, your street, and even your dream of home ownership. And to understand how far this can go, we need to carefully watch the next moves, which is exactly what we will explore further. But first, if you want to follow how this dispute will shape the future of the global economy, make sure to subscribe to Tellnomics and like this video. It helps us bring even deeper analysis to you. To grasp the weight of this revolution, we need to dive into the heart of the conflict, the battle over who dictates global standards. When we talk about modular construction, we are not merely discussing a cheaper way to build houses. We are talking about who will control supply chains, technical norms, and even the logistics of exporting entire homes by ship and truck. China already holds the world's largest manufacturing capacity, accounting for more than 28% of global manufacturing output, according to the World Bank. This scale gives Beijing the ability to mass-produce housing modules and ship them to any continent at unbeatable costs. But is a low price enough to conquer the world? In the United States, the answer takes another form. It is not only about cost, but about embedding technological value. The Tesla tiny house, even still shrouded in speculation, symbolizes this movement. Imagine a portable residence equipped with Tesla Energy solar panels, an integrated Powerwall battery, and a minimalist design engineered for energy efficiency. A home that not only shelters but generates its own electricity, reducing reliance on the grid and lowering monthly bills. It is not just a house, it is a technological platform. Could this be the secret card Washington uses to curb China's expansion? This clash of models, scale and low cost versus innovation and premium technology, opens the door to questions that challenge traditional logic. Will the cities of the future be built from entire neighborhoods of Chinese modular homes, lined up like shipping containers? Or will we see a global elite investing in futuristic Tesla-branded tiny houses, turning the home into yet another status symbol? And what about emerging nations, which urgently need to solve housing deficits, but also want to preserve a measure of autonomy? The United Nations warns that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in urban areas. If that growth is met with modular solutions, we are talking about millions of homes built at an industrial pace. But who will supply these homes? And at what price? Not only in dollars, but in political influence. These questions have no simple answers, but they outline a future in which every person's home could become part of a global geopolitical dispute. And this is precisely the point where our investigation gains new contours, because the clash does not occur only in theory. It is already unfolding in tariffs, trade agreements, and domestic policies within each power. The next step is to understand how this behind-the-scenes war is beginning to alter the balance of power in the global housing sector. Think about the immediate impact of economic policies on this sector. In 2024, the United States government raised import tariffs on a variety of Chinese products, including construction materials, as part of a broader containment strategy, according to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. This means that every prefabricated module coming from China could end up costing dozens of % more, reducing the Asian giant's competitiveness in the American market. But are tariff barriers enough to stop an industry that is growing at breakneck speed and already exporting to dozens of countries? China, on the other hand, responds with tax incentives and direct subsidies to its modular construction firms, allowing them to keep prices low even in the face of obstacles. According to China's Ministry of Housing and Urban-Rural Development, the official goal is that by 2030, more than 30% of all new construction in the country will be industrialized. That translates to millions of housing units, turning the practice into a national standard and generating scale for large-scale exports. And what happens when a technology becomes the standard in a global power? The tendency is for it to spread quickly across the world. This brings us to a layer of tension that goes beyond economics, the battle for cultural influence. The United States wants the home to remain a symbol of status, innovation, and individual freedom, something that aligns perfectly with the futuristic image projected by the Tesla tiny house. China bets on mass efficiency, selling not just houses, but the promise of solving housing crises across entire regions. Which is more powerful, the appeal of the American technological dream or the strength of China's pragmatic solution? This clash also carries a silent risk. If the cities of emerging countries begin to rely primarily on modular units imported from China, new forms of economic and even political dependency could arise. What if, in the future, the maintenance or expansion of these neighborhoods depends on parts or technologies supplied exclusively by Chinese factories? Would that not be a new type of dependency, just as strategic as oil or semiconductors? With every move, the dispute intensifies, and what seems like merely an architectural solution transforms into a geopolitical battle with global reach. But the game is far from over. In the next stage, we will analyze in detail the enigma of the Tesla tiny house, separating fact from speculation and revealing why this idea, even without official confirmation, has already caused so much discomfort in Beijing. Imagine a home of just 15 square meters, equipped with solar panels, an integrated battery, and minimalist design, transported on a trailer and presented as a symbol of sustainable living. That was how the Tesla tiny house appeared in 2017, during a tour across Australia, as a demonstration tool for Tesla's energy products, according to the company itself. Since then, videos, news articles, and even viral rumors have claimed that Elon Musk was about to launch low-cost modular homes, supposedly priced as low as $5,000, claims that fact-checking outlets such as PolitiFact publicly debunked in 2024. But if Tesla is not selling homes, why does this idea remain so vivid in the public imagination? What is at stake is not just a prototype, but a concept. The promise of a self-sufficient home that generates its own energy and depends less on traditional grids speaks directly to two of the 21st century's greatest anxieties, the cost of housing and the climate crisis. According to the International Energy Agency, buildings account for nearly 30% of global energy consumption and almost 30% of carbon dioxide emissions. What if every house could, by design, become part of the solution rather than part of the problem? This narrative has power because it challenges the way we think about home. A technological tiny house may not just be a place to live, but a status object, similar to owning an electric car. This creates an additional cultural conflict. While China sells efficiency and low-cost mass production, Tesla sells exclusivity and innovation. It is not difficult to imagine entire neighborhoods in North America or Europe made up of compact Tesla-branded houses, turning the housing market into something closer to the electronics industry. But is this truly viable on a large scale, or merely a futuristic dream? Here lies the uncomfortable doubt. Even without confirmed production plans, Tesla has managed to plant a seed of uncertainty in the global housing sector. If Elon Musk does decide to enter this game, his brand could attract investors and governments eager to support sustainability projects. Yet, at the same time, it would pit Tesla directly against Chinese giants already operating at massive scale. Which would prevail, disruptive innovation or industrial production at full throttle? It is precisely this tension between promise and reality that will shape the next steps of the dispute. And moving forward, we will dive into how this clash of strategies may reshape not only the housing sector, but also global capital flows and investment patterns in the real estate industry. Now look at the global impact this dispute is already beginning to have on real estate markets. According to a McKinsey report published in 2023, construction costs account for up to 70% of the final price of a residence in major urban centers. If modular industrialization reduces those costs by 40 or even 50%, as already demonstrated in projects across Europe and North America, we are facing a disruption capable of reshaping the entire sector. But will traditional construction firms accept losing ground without putting up resistance? In the United States, real estate companies are pressuring local governments to maintain strict zoning laws that make it harder for tiny houses to enter urban areas. In China, the approach is the opposite, easing regulations to accelerate mass projects, creating entire neighborhoods in just months. This contrast reveals a cultural micro-conflict. On one side, protection of established markets. On the other, the speed of those seeking to dictate the future. But how long can this resistance hold back the tide? Another critical factor is investment capital. International real estate funds are starting to see modular housing as a rapidly appreciating asset. Precedence Research estimates that the global tiny house market could surpass $14 billion by 2030. This means banks, pension funds, and even startups may redirect billions of dollars once earmarked for traditional developments into modular projects. Could we see investors treating homes like stocks, buying and selling entire communities with just a few clicks? But there is also a profound social dilemma. If costs drop, low-income families could finally access homeownership. Yet if large investors dominate the sector, there is the risk that even tiny houses could become another speculative asset, inflating prices and excluding the very people who need them most. This is the central contradiction. The promise of democratization could end up reinforcing inequality, depending on who controls the technology. And this is only the beginning of the deeper economic implications. Beyond the impact on prices and access to housing, the race between China and the United States is starting to shape trade agreements, subsidy policies, and even infrastructure strategies in emerging countries. In the next stage, we will reveal how this global chessboard could transform entire cities and create new forms of economic dependency between nations. Imagine for a moment that entire neighborhoods could be built in weeks instead of years. That is the vision currently driving governments, investors, and corporations. But there is a deeper layer in this dispute: the emotional and cultural impact. A home has always been more than a physical structure. It represents identity, stability, and belonging. Now, when houses are produced on an assembly line like cars, do they lose part of their symbolic value? Or are we witnessing a new way of dreaming about the future? The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development points out that housing prices in its member countries have risen by more than 60% on average over the past 2 decades, outpacing income growth. This figure, published in 2023, underscores the urgency for solutions. But here lies a micro-conflict. While millions of families see tiny houses as a viable escape, traditional construction sectors fear losing relevance and jobs. What happens when an entire industry feels threatened by an innovation promising faster, cheaper methods? There is also the environmental factor. According to the United Nations Environment Program, the construction sector is responsible for more than 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Modular housing, by reducing material waste by up to 90%, according to the Modular Building Institute, could become a strategic piece in the fight against climate change. But are governments and developers ready to embrace a revolution that threatens traditional profit models? And what about you? Would you accept living in a smaller, cheaper, more efficient home, even if it meant giving up conventional standards of space and design? Would you be willing to see your home as part of a global technological network rather than something purely local? These questions seem simple, but carry enormous weight for how we will live in the coming decades. Because this revolution is not just about cheaper homes. It could reshape the way cities grow, how governments design housing policies, and even how world powers use housing as an instrument of international influence. And this is exactly the direction we now move toward, unveiling how this dispute may redraw economic and geopolitical boundaries in the 21st century. We have reached the point where all the pieces of this chessboard connect. The race for modular and tiny houses is not just a commercial clash, it is a reflection of the greatest power struggles of our time. China, with its capacity for mass production, has already positioned itself as a global supplier. The United States, with its image of innovation and strong brands like Tesla, seeks to turn housing into a symbol of technology and status. But in the end, the ones who will truly decide the course of this revolution are not factories or corporations. It is the people living the housing crisis every single day. World Bank data shows that more than 1,600,000,000 people still lack adequate housing. Meanwhile, investment funds are eyeing modular communities as new financial assets capable of delivering rapid returns. We face a dilemma. Will this revolution be used to democratize access to housing or to deepen global real estate speculation? The risk that this promise turns into yet another tool of exclusion is real, and governments will have to decide whether or not to regulate this emerging market. Throughout our investigation, we have seen how micro-conflicts reveal the contradictions of this dispute: tariffs versus subsidies, innovation versus scale, exclusivity versus mass adoption. But now, in closing, we must face the central question: are modular homes a solution or just another illusion wrapped in marketing and numbers? The answer may lie in the balance between public policy, technological innovation, and industrial capacity. Without that balance, the dream may turn into dependency. And here is the final provocation. Perhaps the true conflict is not between China and the United States, but between people's urgent needs and the interests of powerful global players. Would you be ready to live in a modular home, knowing it carries with it an entire geopolitical dispute? Or would you rather believe the solution will come from more traditional forms of housing? Whatever your answer, one thing is certain: the home of the future will no longer be just brick and cement, but also a piece of the great game of global power. And that is why, here at Tellnomics, we will continue to follow every move on this chessboard. If you have made it this far, subscribe, like this video, and leave your comment. Who do you think will win, the American innovation model or Chinese scale? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.